For the past few days, the internet has been going crazy with the reveal of the Terminus decree. Basically, the Grey Knights have been instructed to make sure the Emperor sits back down on a golden throne should he ascend to godhood or worse. However, they were not giving strict instructions as to how to accomplish this. But basically what this means is that the Grey Knights would have to traverse to Terra, fight their way through the Custodians and the Sisters of Silence, and then take down the Emperor in whatever state he has become. The Emperor needs to stay upon the Golden Throne to keep the Astronomicon lit to ensure the survival of humanity. Anything else is blasphemy. So with this new lore, we have a ton of people going crazy over why would GW include this? How can they do this to the Grey Knights? Basically, giving the Grey Knights a suicide mission with no clear instructions. This seems like an impossible task. However, this has caused many people to try and deep into the lore of the Grey Knights to see in what way, shape, or form they can accomplish said task. So here we have a portion of a novel that somebody wrote by Universal Truth. It is about the Emperor and the Terminus decree and how the Grey Knights can accomplish this. So I'm not sure if it was the author that sent me the link to this, but anyway, I'll leave it down in the description so you guys can go ahead and read the entirety of the fan novel. But for now, let's dive into this fan 40K lore. The cold silence of the fortress monastery on Titan was shattered by the shrill crackle of the Vox network. The message, delivered with chilling precision, echoed through the ranks of the Grey Knights and reverberated across the farthest reaches of the Imperium. The Emperor stirs. The Terminus decree is active. Caldor Drago stood alone before the ancient ceremonial blade, its psychic runes flickering faintly in the gloom of the chapel. The weapon, forged in the fires of ancient battles, hummed with an eerie resonance, as if it too knew the magnitude of the task ahead. The weight of the moment pressed down on Drago like a crushing force. This was no mere conflict against chaos or the demons of the Imperium. This was war against the Emperor, the one they had sworn to protect, and now the very being they had revered was no longer a god king to be defended, but a force to be contained. The Terminus decree had been buried deep within the vaults of Titan, a secret known only to the Supreme Grand Master and his closest lieutenants. It was the Emperor's final command, sealed in an ancient tome. Should he ever rise from the Golden Throne, he must be returned to his prison, no matter the cost. The Grey Knights had been created to fulfill this sacred mission, and now that burden had fallen upon them. After all of this was inevitable from the moment the decree was written. The chamber fell into an unnatural silence, not the peace of quiet, but the suffocating absence of everything: sound, time, reason. Even the warp-boned shadows recoiled from the truth. It was not meant to be spoken. Grandmaster Drago stood unmoving before the sealed slab of black adamantium that bore the Terminus decree, a relic older than Titan itself. Carved with forbidden sigils, it had been locked away with psychic wards so severe that just standing near it could cause dreams to scream for mercy. Now its seals were unraveled one by one, hissing with sorcerous pressure, reality fraying like rotted silk. The Grey Knights gathered around him did not speak. Words had no meaning here. They were weapons, and none were as sharp for what had begun. If I ever rise from the throne, return me, or end me, no matter the cost. And now the cost had come. The journey to Terra was swift but fraught with tension. The deeper Drago and his brothers ventured into the warp, the heavier the anxiety grew. Every passing moment seemed to drag them closer to an inevitable confrontation. A battle not with chaos, not with Xenos, but with the very soul of the Imperium. The Emperor's absence left a gaping hole in the Astra Militarum psyche, the Custodies' unwavering faith, and the Adeptus Mechanicus' worship of a divine technology. The Golden Throne stood as a silent monument to the Emperor's power, but its true purpose was unknown. How long would the Imperium endure without its guiding star?
"Prepare yourselves," Drago murmured to his brother.
his voice tight with the weight of responsibility. "We are the last line of defense. If we fail, there will be nothing left. Nothing but a galaxy torn asunder." As the Grey Knights descended upon Terra, they saw a world unraveling before their eyes. The once proud Imperial Palace, a gleaming symbol of unity and strength, now loomed over a shattered world. The Golden Throne had become a flashpoint. All across Terra, battle-scarred war machines and weapons of war, titans, Castellan robots, all carved their way through the streets, leaving ruins in their wake. Each machine, powered by ancient cogitators and arcane technologies, moved with terrifying purpose. Night Titans, humanoid war engines standing several stories tall, crushed enemies beneath their massive feet, their arms raised to fire plasma cannons and meltaguns, the heat from which could melt entire battalions of soldiers in seconds. Their armored exteriors, covered in archaic sigils and marks of the Adeptus Mechanicus, glowed with the telltale signs of a long-forgotten technology. Every step of a Titan-class walker sent tremors through the ground, their gargantuan frames covered in thick ceramite plating that could resist even the most devastating of artillery. The weapons mounted on their backs, volcano cannons, Gatling blasters, fired with the sheer force of a supernova, ripping apart anything and everything that dared challenge their might. And yet, it was not just these colossal war machines that weighed heavily on Drago's mind. The Grey Knights, equipped with their storm bolters and psychically infused weapons, stood on the edge of a precipice. Their armor, a mixture of ancient ceramite and Aegis-imbued metal, gleamed in the glow of the battlefield, but every step felt as though it would bring them closer to the edge of an irreversible conflict. Force swords, halberds, and psychic staffs crackled with latent energy, each weapon honed to perfection to combat the Emperor's greatest enemies. But what was left to fight for if the Emperor himself was no longer the guiding force for humanity? The confrontation on Terra, when the Grey Knights breached the Imperial Palace, they were met with resistance unlike they had faced before. The Adeptus Custodes, their golden armor gleaming like the sun, they moved with terrifying precision. They fought with a purpose beyond that of any mortal soldier, for their very souls were bound to the Emperor. Their weapons, the Guardian Spear, meltaguns, and power swords ripped through the air, cutting down enemies with blinding speed and precision. Each custodian was indeed a living weapon, imbued with the Emperor's own strength, and each strike was an act of devotion to the Emperor's will. But the Grey Knights were undeterred. Each one of them had been forged in the fires of battle, their minds sharpened, their wills unbreakable. Drago led them through the smoke and ruins, storm bolters blasting away enemies as they advanced towards their goal. Psychic shields flared as the Custodes' weapons rained down on them, deflecting the fury of battle like mere raindrops. But the Grey Knights' mission was grim. They needed to reach the Golden Throne, and they would not stop until they did. Valerius, the Prosecutor General of the Custodes, stood before the Golden Throne, his gaze unyielding as he watched the Grey Knights approach. His golden armor, battered by years of combat, gleamed in the dim light of the chamber, and his guardian spear crackling with energy. "The Emperor is gone," Valerius spoke, his voice booming and filled with ancient sorrow. "But the throne remains, and we, the Emperor's chosen, shall not let it fall." One of his warriors, battle-worn and bloodied, stepped forward, his voice filled with doubt. "But what if the Emperor does not need it anymore? What if his time is truly done, Valerius?" The Custode turned slowly to face him, his eyes hard as diamond-edged ceramite. "To question now is treason. The Emperor's will echoes within us. The throne must be defended no matter the cost." The Mechanicus decision deep beneath Terra in the vast echoing chambers of the Adeptus Mechanicus Fabricator General Belisarius Call stood before a massive array of cogitators, his mind racing as he pondered the future. The Golden Throne had been both a symbol and a machine, a blend of the Emperor's divinity and ancient technological might, but now the Emperor's absence left the throne's purpose in question. "The throne is the machine," Call mused aloud, his voice tinged with the weight of millennia of knowledge, "and the machine must be maintained. But now the Emperor is no longer bound to it, so we must ask, do we preserve it as a relic, or dismantle it and forge something anew?" A tech priestess stepped forward, her voice filled with fear. To destroy the throne is to risk unraveling the very fabric of the Imperium. Without the Astronomicon, the warp storms will tear the galaxy apart. We must not act in haste. Call's gaze narrowed, his eyes glowing with a fierce intellect. Perhaps the time has come for something greater. We have always been creators, not mere worshippers. We cannot stand idle. The Emperor's time might have passed, but ours is just beginning. After pushing through the remains of Terra, the Grey Knights finally arrive at the Golden Throne. The Emperor, their once unquestioned God King, was gone. The seat where the Emperor had once rested was nothing but an empty void, a hollow monument to a lost age. No traces of the Emperor's power remained. The throne, once brimming with psychic energy, now flickered weakly, as if the very life force of the Imperium was waning. "No!" Drago's voice cracked as he looked upon the seat. "Where is he? Where has he gone?" Valerius stepped forward, his face lined with sorrow and disbelief. "The throne remains, but it is no longer his," Drago whispered, his voice barely audible. "But the Terminus decree, we followed it. He was supposed to return. Faith is all that binds us now. Question it, and it falls apart. Faith without truth is a chain to bind us to ruin." Valerius's voice softened, heavy with the weight of the Emperor's absence. The throne was never just a seat for a king. It was a machine, a device binding a god to reality. But what happens when that god no longer needs it? What becomes of us all? The light is gone. The galaxy is now a prison where every star is a dying eye. He left us, not because he was cruel, but because he could not bear what had become. We are alone, and the warp is listening. 100 years after the Emperor vanished, the Imperium split into three. The Hollow Throne, ruled by the Keepers, a puppet god encoded in logic and illusion, maintaining faith by terror. The Cog Practice Accord, led by Belisarius Call and the Mechanicus heretics, rejecting faith for machine ascendance. And the free worlds of solace, where humanity begins to remember stars, poetry, and truth, but fears to speak too loud lest they be heard by the warp. The Grey Knights are now gone, scattered, and somewhere in the webway, a presence stirs, no longer chained to a throne of gold, no longer bound by worship. Something greater, or worse. The Emperor is gone, but his shadow remains, and it is hungry. All of this was inevitable from the moment the decree was written. And with that being said, guys, this is the fan lore by Universal Truth, which was basically a rough draft, and you can find the full book at the link down in the description below. Again, really cool, interesting concept as to what may happen after the decree is enacted and the Emperor has left the bounds of the Golden Throne. Really cool, interesting concept. The only thing I don't really understand is, why is Drago here? We know that Drago is basically bound to the warp, never to fully return to real space. And because of this, he is unable to lead his warriors to where they need to be led. He does come in their greatest time of need to help, but he is always sucked back into warp. So because of that, Drago can't really do anything with the Terminus decree. And in the new book of the Grey Knights, the new edition codex, he's actually not in there. So we see that maybe it's time for the Grey Knights to choose a new Supreme Grand Master to lead them, especially when the Terminus decree has now been unveiled as to what it really is, and maybe the future of the Grey Knights is going to change dramatically. So whether they are trying to become stronger in order to combat the enemies of mankind, or stronger in a means to basically ready themselves to fight against whatever the Emperor becomes after he ascends, they definitely need more power, because right now I cannot see them taking on the Custodes and the Sisters of Silence, making it all the way to the Golden Throne, and taking on the Emperor Ascended. So again, guys, let me know your thoughts down below. If there's any other piece of fan lore that you guys want me to cover, let me know. And thanks for sending me this lore. Really interesting take on what could happen with the Terminus decree, especially after the Imperium basically splits into 3 different factions. I could definitely see something like that happening, at least a civil war of sorts. But yeah, that's all I got for today, guys. Thanks again for listening, watching, commenting, and subscribing. This has been the Sound Alchemist, part of One Mind Syndicate, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
Always used to put my freedom first in any situation.